Good morning, everyone. Today you're going to see me work out a page, and this is something that I thought would be fun, using bubble wrap to make a texture in the background. As you can see, I've already been playing, and you see the texture that it creates. It's fun. So I encourage those of you who are creatives, or those of you that just like to play, to use texture and objects that you wouldn't normally use. So today, not only are you going to get to see me do this, but you're going to get to see me put together a page and a process of how I think, how I decide, and working out a page when you're not quite sure which direction you're going. So as you can see, these textures can be used in a fun way. And I'm not quite sure that you guys can see that real well. You may be able to. I can see a little bit on my screen, but that's what bubble wrap and distressed ink will do. Of course, you can increase the concentration however dark or light you want it. So we're just playing here. So today, I've got some things I'm going to show you. I'm going to start with this beauty right here. Now, I was playing with it earlier, and I believe this is where I want to start out. Now, the trouble that I can have with this particular journal is these pages are not paper. It's a handmade journal. The binding, the cover is leather, but the pages are handmade paper that are made exclusively out of cotton. So it feels like paper, but it is recycled and repurposed cotton. So as you can see, these soft ruffles kind of give it away. It's a fun journal to use. Of course, I'm getting to the end of it, so it is getting very large. It didn't start out this large, but that's okay. This has been a journey. That's why I love it, is because this entire journal is a journey that I've been on since June 1st. June 1st is when I started this year. So I'm brand new at doing most of this. So I've somewhat learned as I am going. So I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you stopping by here to do this with me. So my subject matter is this little guy right here. Isn't he beautiful? Now, you'll see these purple swatches, and it is this pen right here. And I'm not sure that the camera's picking up on that because it is somewhat shiny. It's a metallic brush marker that I got at the Dollar Tree. So you can shop the dollar stores and get materials that give you a chance to play without spending a whole lot of money. So what I like to make sure that I do is I get a paper that's a lot like the one I'm going to use, and I swatch it. So I know that it's gonna start out looking like this, but that it's gonna dry like that. So if that's what you're wanting, then you know you can use it on the paper you're about to use it. So what I did with this little guy is I swatched swatches on him, and I meant to do that. So these little swatches are not tests. They are actually color swatches that I wanted to make. So that's where they came from. So we've got this guy right here. And I've got some lace. This was actually a full sheet that I cut. And this is where I got it. So it comes with sticker sheets of different lace patterns of black and white. Your typical lace patterns. And some of these are a little bit different. This one's interesting. And so is that one. So what I'm trying to do to start out is create layers of interest that make the subject matter just pop. You don't want your subject matter to just sit there and blend into the background so much so that you lose the point of your journal page, unless, of course, that is what type of journaling you want to do for that particular page. Some people will not have a main subject matter, but will go for color or shape. And if that's what they want to do, that's perfect. And that's what I love about this craft is nobody's doing it right. Nobody's doing it correct. This is a craft that every time somebody does this, it's right for them and it is correct. So it gives you a lot of room to play and be yourself. So not everybody is the best at it, and not everybody is the worst. It's whatever you want to come up with on your page. So that's what makes it so much fun. It gives you room to play. So I'm liking that right there. And I'm also going to introduce, because it's fall, I'm going to introduce these little beauties right here. But another main focal point I wanted to introduce was these little spooky gates and cement columns that look like they go to a spooky house, maybe way back here somewhere. It could be a cemetery, we don't know. But this is your world and you make up the story as you go along. So, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to try. And what I want to do is I don't want to put this image and this image next to each other because that's boring to me. So to me, I think I need to offset it down here somewhere. And then I may introduce, like, here is this corner, then this one's going to go on this corner. Okay. So then what we may do is introduce some of these somehow. I don't want to cover up this beautiful imagery here. So what I may do is you can take your materials, use them in a way that is not meant, like this is meant to be like this, but you can turn it. You can turn it, or you can turn it any way you want. So, I'm going to clip this here. If you're not quite sure, do it as far as placement and let it sit there. And then refocus your mind somewhere else. And if there's a problem, your eye is going to see it because you refocused yourself. I learned that from an art teacher in high school. She said, "You see a problem?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "I see it too." She says, "But I saw it right away because I was not up close to it." So as an artist, when you see a problem, walk away from it for a few minutes. Go to the bathroom, get a snack, a drink, go watch a show, go do some chores. And when you come back, you're going to find out exactly what's wrong because you refocused your brain. So your brain wants symmetry. Your brain wants order. And your brain knows which colors go together. And that's the beauty that God made us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that sit over here. And I'm going to concentrate on this guy here. So I'm going to clip these just like that out of my way. Because I know I want that lace right there. So I'm going to go ahead and glue it down. But you know what? I don't need to glue it. I realize this is a sticker. Let's see if I can get it to behave. There it is. Now what throws me off sometimes is these pages are not even because they're handmade. I want it to be right up against, and you see how when I peel this off it starts to take off the cotton. So I'm gonna leave him down. step, as you can see, we're going to end up covering up part of it with this girl right here. I like this imagery, so I don't want to cover her up too much. And that's the exact placement that I want it. So if you notice, this edge and this edge I'm going to leave unglued because I want to tuck in. Now what just happened is something that every creative goes through. You start out like this, but because you're working with the paper, it ends up like this, and that's where you want to see, does that look better to me? Is that what I want to accomplish? So we're going to look at that. And I am enjoying that. So I do like that better. So let me show you again. Because it breaks up the dark. It gives more interest. And as it goes on top, you get that purple swatch right there that I had done earlier. So we're going to do that. It doesn't take away from your main subject. It adds interest. And because I tore it, it adds a little bit of whimsy to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy down because I know where I want him to be. And sometimes too, when you have this over, it breaks up that rectangle, which sometimes you want to do to soften it. If you want to soften an edge, you can either tear it or you can put something over it to soften that angle. We know we want him up here. He is handsome. Okay. So do you see how this is uneven? Because it is. And this paper here, you can see they're very unevenly torn. They're not cut, they're torn, which is really nice. It makes it, it gives it that ancient look. So I'm going to place this over there, but I'm going to leave this untucked, or unglued rather, so that if I want to place something under it, I still can, because this is the glue I use, and it's Tombow Aqua Mono Liquid Glue. I got this at Michael's, and then I also ordered more supplies of this on Amazon because I could get 3 for a really good price rather than just the one. I got 3 for the one that I bought at Michael's. So you live and learn. Okay, so shop around for your supplies and see if somebody has it for less money. And you see I got all the ink on my fingers, and that's okay. It'll wear off eventually. And that's the problem with using the inks if you don't let it dry long enough. But we don't care if we have purple fingers. We're having fun. Okay. And again, I'm not going to glue these two. So be strategic with where you want to put your glue. Be conservative so that way you can go back later And if you end up not pushing something underneath it, you can always glue it down. Okay, so I'm liking that right there. Now let's see what we have over here. We've got that, and we've got this. You see how the lace is over here? I want to put the lace over here. So this guy is up against the middle, and so I want to put this one not up against the middle, because I want this purple to show through. And I'm going to show you what that's going to do and why I just changed my mind. So you see how it's butt up against it? It almost blends into the image, almost looking like it's the same image, which is something you can do. But I don't want that. I want to add more interest. So I'm going to pull it away so that you see that purple coming through, so that it becomes a separate image. I want the images to be separate. This is hanging over for now, and later on I'll cut it off. So I don't mind that it's sitting there for now. Okay, so now do you see how this is an empty space that has not much going on? So do you see how I put this one over this image? I'm wanting to do the same with this guy. Okay, so let's see what that does. So there's with it over, there's with it under. Do you see how much interest it adds by putting this over? It adds that purple hue. It adds some interest. And it really makes this image come alive. So, again, you see how boring that looks to me? And then that adds some interest. So that's where we're going with that. Okay, so I'm going to get these elements down so that we can begin to build some more. This is a sticker. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down. Now what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this area here, but I'm also looking at this area here. So what does this image do to this? Do I want it to be symmetrical, evenly spaced, or do I want it to be further towards the bottom? These are decisions that you make based on what you want the area to look like. And as you can see, the unevenness of the pages, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this down, but I'm not going to glue this edge because I may want to tuck something under it. So I know this edge is going to be glued down. But I'm going to leave this area undone so I can tuck. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to get this guy down first so he can go underneath. So let's go ahead and get this one glued. And I'm going to glue him all the way down because I don't want anything underneath. I don't need to tuck anything under. If you thought that you might want to tuck under, then just be strategic about where you put your glue. Now I do want to line up these two. I want to make sure that that covers that there's no edge. You see how that's wanting to peek out. When I try to straighten this to the top edge, it wants to peek out. So I'm going to make sure that that's covering the edge of that lace. And it doesn't matter that these previous edges are sticking out from the previous journal. Okay, so there, let's look at what we have. We have a dark image and a dark image, lace and lace, purple and purple, and purple in the middle. Do you see the symmetry that we're building? Okay. Now, is this going to come into play? I want it to, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do. So we're not going to tackle him right now. I want to add the orange, but I'm doubting that I want to add the orange. So when you're not sure, you want to move on to something else. So I'm going to introduce something that I already started. And this is something that I've done before in previous journals. And I just accordion folded it. Now, I do want this to be interactive on the page. So I'm going to attach it to the page in such a way that when the journal closes, it closes. It's called an accordion fold. And all you do is you fold this piece under, and then you fold the next piece and crease, fold over again, backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards until you get to the end of the piece. And then when you open it up, it becomes an accordion. Now, how we're going to get it to be interactive on the page is these end tabs right here. And it's okay that this is tearing because we're gonna glue it down. We're also gonna work with this tab right here. So these tabs will be attached to the paper, but when opened, they will open, and when closed, they will close. You see? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clip this down so I can work with as flat a surface as possible. So I'm going to glue this tab down, leaving this part unglued. Okay, so where I'm going to put it, it's got to be strategic. So I think I want it there. And I think I want it there. But I'm gonna play with it here for just a minute. Do I want it up here or down here? I'm thinking right about there. Now you see these white parts because I really worked with this paper. I'm going to show you how we're going to get rid of those. I really creased these papers, these folds rather, very sharply because I want them to stay. So I don't want to cover him up too much. I don't want to cover up the stone on this too much. So let's see. Is that going to close? It looks like it's going to close. How we know is we're going to close the page. And I like what that does. You see, when you close the page, let me pull it over so you guys can see. When you close the page, it collapses on itself. And that's what you want. So we're going to do the other side too. And yes, it will collapse on itself. So that's how you engineer an accordion fold that you want to interact with your page. So I'm going to go ahead and get this edge down. And it will take a minute just to tack. And while we're working on the other parts of the journal, it can be tacking down. So I'm going to do this one first. Going to do this one next. And I'm playing with it to see what it's going to do. Now an example of an accordion fold while this is tacking, I'm going to show you. Here is my white rabbit that I did an accordion fold in order to get this zipper to close. The paper it's attached to had to be an accordion fold so that it would move back and forth as you open and as you close the zipper. You see? So you can make an accordion fold to move an object back and forth. And I did that zipper. Now let's see, here's an example of an accordion fold that I did, that as you close the page, it flattens, and as you open the page, it opens back up. And I put these fans in the middle of the crease. So this is something you can do yourself. It's really fun. It took me a while. The video of me creating this is in my playlist. So if you want to see what it took, and as you can see, this glue really, after setting overnight, really gets these in there. They're very secure. And these are very secure. So I can put embellishments with this glue. Okay, so let's go back to Kitty Cat. And you see this is already setting up. So I'm going to go ahead. And this is very dicey because if I don't get this piece right, it's not going to work right. So I'm going to make sure that as I put this down, it's only this one that's going to have the glue. And you guys can try all these things yourself. I don't own them. Some of them I've seen. This particular one I came up with out of necessity to get a zipper to work back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to put that down there so it's not hiding him too much. And then I'm going to reintroduce these folds back. And you can crimp them a little bit more to make them sharper. Okay. So when we close, let's see if it's gonna behave. Let's see. Now it doesn't want to behave, you see that? But that's part of the engineering process, is see why it's not wanting to go back together. And you see this flap right here? I may need to secure it down in order for this to actually come together. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm gonna crease it in case that's what it needs. So sometimes it works perfectly and sometimes it doesn't. See, now it's wanting to fold over, and then when you open it, it comes back out. So let's see if the other way around it does it as well. We're closing and it's collapsing. You see how it's collapsing? So when you build something, you want to test it, and you want to make sure that it works exactly as you need it to. So we're going to leave that alone for right now and let it continue to tack so that it will stay. I'm having to put books underneath this guy so that I can get a flat surface to work because he's way too thick. Okay, so that's what we have currently. So the butterfly is going to be an accordion. Okay. Now let's see here. I do have some flowers that I may want to do something here, but I'm not sure that any of these are gonna work well. These are red, and I don't want to introduce red. I'm gonna stick with the purples and the neutrals and the blacks. I do have, let's see, because I'm not sure I want more purple flowers. I do have some of these. Oh, here we go. We've got some black and white roses. Let's see how that looks. So if you're curious, if you want to see how something looks, just place it on the page and sit with it for a minute. I don't want another door. I like the gate. I don't want to create the same. I don't want a girl because we're dealing with Mr. Kitty Cat. He's the main focus. We don't want a pretty girl on there. You see how this is way too bright? I don't want something that's way too bright. It's white, and these are mainly neutrals. Okay, so I don't want a bench. I don't want to introduce a super color because I don't want to compete with him. And some of these are a lot of fun, but not on this page. Ooh, look what we have here. Okay, let's look at these. So we've got some stickers. Now these are yellow and blue. This is red, but I'm gonna let you see what they do to the page. I don't want to introduce another color. And these colors are going to take it away from what we're trying to achieve, or what I'm trying to achieve. So you see how those colors take it into a kaleidoscope effect of color, and I'm not wanting to do that. So let's see if I have any more, but maybe there's a black. Oh, there's a white rose, but it's too white. I want to keep the spooky vibe. So these are decisions you want to make. And on this one, I cut out the frame, which is interesting. I cut out the frame on one of these stickers. There's the white again, but I don't want entirely white. This right here says innocence and beauty, and this is not innocence. This one also. Because there's no red, I don't want to introduce red. Looky here, looky there. Okay. So we're going to take away the ones we definitely don't want. And we're going to sit with the ones that we think I might want. Okay. Now this is interesting because you can highlight a portion of a picture of an image. Let's take these away. You can highlight it either straight on, you can turn it, or you can turn it, or turn it. Well, that's the beauty of it. So if you want to add interest, you can add a frame, but I'm not quite sure that I want to go that direction. So I'm going to put it off to the side. I don't want blue. And that's a little bit, it's shiny. And I've got a lot of dull papers on here except for the lace, of course. So I'm not quite sure I like the look of that. It looks a little too bright. Look how dull this one is and how bright that one is. I'm not liking that. So now I want to see exactly where I want to place this. And I'm thinking I want in this area here to cover that gap. Now, do I want to cover the whole gap with that image? Or do I want to tear it and share part of that image down here? Let's see. I'm going to cover up just to see what it would look like. If we cut it in half, it would go there, but it would leave a gap here. And I don't want to do that, just to fill that in. So I'm going to go ahead and place this. It is a sticker. Let's see if it's going to cooperate. Sometimes in my old videos, you'll see that these stickers do not cooperate. Okay. So it still gives it a spooky vibe. It's got its neutrals that blend with this, but yet this image is not covered up. Okay. Now, do I want to introduce the orange? Just because it's autumn, just because it's fall. So I'm looking at the fact that it's going to take my composition from being symmetrical to having an element that skews it. And sometimes that's what you need. But again, I don't want to mess with this image down here. So I have a conundrum. Okay. I also have this girl right here that I'm thinking about. And I think I have an idea that instead of using this big girl right here that again is gonna cover over this, I'm liking this area right here. So I'm gonna do this and try not to tear that big, beautiful rose. But I'm gonna tear this little corner, and I'll use that other one for another spot. Now, you can place something down here and making it look like there's more of it down here that you can't see. So let me move this up so you can see it a little bit better of what I'm talking about, because it's gonna go right here on the edge is what I'm thinking. Now, this edge right here, and I may want something right here as well. So let's see what this does to that. See how beautiful that is? And then I can just kind of tear this a little bit to make it more even. I'm liking this over here more, because if you look at this, it's a lot of the same, so it somewhat blends. But what's interesting is there's a little tiny bit of red, and it's so minuscule that it's not going to really matter, because it doesn't take away from the rest of the composition. So I'm going to go ahead and place her down. I'm not going to tack anything underneath. So I'm going to place her all the way down. And she overlaps this piece and this piece. Okay. Now here's our butterfly. And it is tacked. It is fully tacked. So when we close it, it collapses. When we open it, it opens. And that's what I wanted to achieve. So see, we close it, and when it opens, it comes alive. Okay, so I am still bothered by this edge right here. I'm gonna go ahead and glue this down, because I don't like the way that's coming up. Okay. So, you can use a whole image, or you can use a part of an image. Now, what I like about these is it's got the music notes behind it. Or if I don't want to use this part, I can try to use this part right here that has interest. But I have to pay attention to this angle right here. Do you see how that looks skewed between these two? You want to pay attention to that, because your eye is going to think something's wrong. So if I place it here, do you see how those actually balance? So I want to pay attention to that. So I may want some of these leaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tear this so that I can work with it. Okay. Because again, I'm wanting to balance this angle with this angle. Otherwise, when your brain looks at it, it's going to say, ooh, something's wrong. Okay, so do you see how those angles need to balance? I'm going to put it off and see what your brain does when I put it off. It says something's wrong. Now I can see, because there's space, I can place it under that accordion. So you see how that looks off from this angle? So I need to make sure when I put it down, these angles balance. So it's not just subject matter. Okay, so that is the angle I want to put it on. And I'm not going to put glue on the bottom part of this because I'm going to need to tear part of that off. I want that angle to balance. Do you see how the two angles balance? And then I'm going to tear this part off. And you see how crazy craggy that got? Because I tore a little too much. That's okay. That's all right. Okay. Now, this has a white edge to it. And you can leave it like that if you want. I'm going to tack this down. And I'm going to show you how you can fix those white edges. So bear with me. Now, Distress Oxide, you can use the black or you can use the tan. I'm going to use the tan. And this is actually not tan, it's called Vintage Photo. The reason why I'm lifting it up is I don't want the tan or the Vintage Photo on the background. Okay, you see how that softens that white edge? And then that edge is softened. You can even put some of it on the image itself. So you can antique an image like I'm doing now by putting some of this Vintage Photo just in strategic places. And you see how that made it more vintage looking to go with that. And that was just something that I just thought up just now. So you can actually make it a little bit more vintage. And you see how that color is just coming alive, making it blend with that, which is perfect. It's giving it more of a vintage look. And you can do this with these papers. You can put inks. Now remember those white spots? This is how you get rid of those. Those creases, the color of the page starts to come off. Do you see that little white? You see how it's getting worse? These are things that happen as you're creating. And you see how it makes it go away, makes it blend in more. You see that white corner, and we're gonna blend it out so it's not so jarring to the eye. Now I have to be careful that I don't get too much on Kitty Cat. Okay. So if you wanted to, you see this white light area here? You see how you can vintage it? If you want to make it look older, you see how I'm just doing the vintage? I don't want to vintage these girls right here. I got a little bit here, but that's okay. And you see how it starts to vintage him as well? So I want to stay away from him and just vintage around him. And it starts to soften the blacks as well. So you can even vintage this side. You see how you just lightly go over the areas that you want to vintage, and you add interest, and you make the areas just pop. So you can use your distressed inks on these papers here, not just on the edges. Put a little bit down in here, but not too much. So you see how that somewhat brightened it? So just use a light hand until you know what it's gonna do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our Black Cat page. And there she is. I thank you for coming on this journey with me, so you can see how my mind thinks as I create a journal page, what I'm looking for, what I'm not looking for. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, wonderful evening, wherever you are in the world. Subscribe so we can visit again. Thank you so much for coming.